Yesterday, Donald Trump, yesterday afternoon, Saturday afternoon, that was August 8th, Donald Trump signed in a few executive orders. And I just wanted to discuss some of those, really talk about we'll talk about the executive orders themselves and some of the implications of them, the legality, of course. Anytime you're talking about Trump, something you gotta call into question. And so let's go through them and see what we have on our hands here. So this is from CBS News. Trump signs measures to boost economic aid, but could face challenges. So President Trump signed an executive order and three memoranda Saturday, meant to provide economic aid to those struggling during the coronavirus pandemic, with additional benefits for the unemployed and tax cuts for workers. The executive actions are intended to bypass Congress, which has been deadlocked in negotiations to extend relief and could face legal challenges. The actions, if implemented, would provide $400 in added unemployment benefits for those out of work because of the pandemic and defer payroll taxes for those earning less than $100,000 a year, which is most people in the country. Unemployed workers had been receiving a supplement of $600, a benefit that expired on July 31st. In one memorandum, the president directed the Treasury Secretary to defer payroll taxes for workers most in need from September 1st through December 31st. The payroll tax, which takes money from workers' paychecks to fund Social Security and Medicare, would still eventually be owed by workers unless there is further government action. Mr. Trump also asked the secretary to explore ways of canceling the debt. Okay, so let's just stop here really quickly and just go over this, what they're saying these executive orders were. They said there is the one that probably stands out to most people, since there were about 30 million Americans that have been impacted by the recent deadline or discontinuation of the federal pandemic unemployment compensation, which was the $600 weekly benefit that was added to your weekly unemployment benefits. Trump's executive order says at least it seeks to provide $400 a week as opposed to the $600 a week. So that's $200 less a week, about $800 less a month for everyone. But still a better situation for most people. They would say, I think they'd agree, they'd rather have the 400 than zero right now, which is what Congress has provided at this point. So where he seeks to get the money from, that's a point of interest, and that's something that we're gonna discuss further. So that's one thing. There's also all right. So there were a few other additional executive orders. We'll come back. Just to note here, one thing that I want to point out right at the top here, where they say that he's talking about doing a payroll cut here. So the important thing to note on that's where, now, while the unemployment compensation would be a nice thing, although again, we'll get into where he's taking the money from and what that means, because this money hasn't been allocated. Money hasn't yet been allocated for this purpose. So he is taking this money from other places, essentially. So, but this issue of the payroll tax cut, this is something that we should sort of be a red flag for you, should definitely send off some alarm bells for you, whenever you see these payroll tax cuts. This is essentially robbing Peter to pay Paul. Essentially, this would be taking money from retirement, essentially, because when you're talking about Social Security and Medicare, those are services right now that you use in retirement. You have to be 65 years old to receive Medicare, and you have to be retired to receive your Social Security, or disabled to receive Social Security. And so these are things that people are needing when they're in their most, vulnerable state, essentially. And so, you're in your retirement, you're on a fixed income at that stage. And so this is what for most people, you're on a fixed income. And so, you rely on this money. And so to not pay into that fund now, your Social Security tax is your Social Security benefit is calculated based on how much you've put into the system. So it's not just a flat rate across the board. You have to put into Social Security to get out in the end. And so the people that have the highest pay already are going to get the most in Social Security. Now, Social Security and other payroll taxes stop being taken out after $120,000 a year. I believe the number is. It may not be. It's about that. I believe it's exactly 120,000, but they may have altered it slightly with inflation recently. But that's as of a couple of years ago, it was $120,000. That's when they stopped taking out any payroll taxes. So if you make more than $120,000 a year, any dollar you make over that is not taxed for Social Security, Medicare. And so that means that that's a huge benefit to folks that make higher than $120,000. If you don't earn more than $120,000, a disproportionate amount of your income is being taken out to pay the payroll taxes. And so these are regressive taxes. And so just something to note. So, but this is really important. Whenever you see someone talking about a payroll tax cut like this means that you're reducing the amount of benefits that a person is going to have because they're not offsetting in any way. And so what this does ultimately is reduce the amount of Social Security that you'll receive in retirement. And so this is going to make decisions like this set a generation up for a more riskier and less secure retirement. And so that's just something that should definitely be noted here about these executive orders. That is not an economic stimulus, and it's a very short-term, short-sighted stimulus that really takes away from your own retirement in order to make it through this emergency right now, when really this emergency was was at least exacerbated by our government. And other governments have been able to handle this without mass unemployment. Germany went from 5% to 6% unemployment over the course of the pandemic, where the U.S. went from 5 to over 15% officially, but unofficial numbers had it up well over 20%. And so moving along, reading from the CBS article, measures relating to taxes and spending typically require legislative action by Congress. The president expressed doubt his orders could be challenged in court and said that he believed Americans would receive the promised relief quickly. Mr. Trump's executive actions also seek to extend a moratorium on student loan payments and consider ways to halt some evictions and foreclosures. So that's about the brunt of the executive orders here. We have unemployment benefit extension, federal unemployment benefit extension, $400 a week. You have a moratorium on evictions and student loan payments being extended. So I don't know. I don't have it down here exactly when that would extend to, but I'm guessing that it would extend out till when the rest of these measures extend to, which is about the end of, sometime in December. And so this would halt evictions for a few months longer and foreclosures, as well as student loan payments. And so those are all, those are things that are definitely welcome, and those need to be done. These are things that you have to do in order to ensure that the economy doesn't completely collapse. And so those are, some of the bare minimum things, and those are much less controversial, the evictions and foreclosures. And so in order to help us understand this better, what I'd like to do is just take a look at, NPR interviewed a legal scholar who weighed in on this and the constitutionality of these executive orders, because again, as they mentioned here in this article, the president expressed doubt his order. Measures relating to taxes and spending typically require legislative action by Congress. There's sections of the Constitution that discuss appropriations and how funding can be appropriated for government spending. And the president, typically, it's Congress who holds most of the power. in controlling that spending. However, in times of war or national emergency, which we are definitely within, over time, Congress has given power to the president in order to it increases the executive power of the president so that they can actually, in fact, move funding around. Thanks for watching Radical Democracy Podcast. I'm your host, Kamali Rose. Please like and share this video, subscribe to the channel, and if it doesn't bother you, hit that bell below to receive notifications whenever we go live or launch a new video. Please leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if you can afford it, do me a huge favor and head over to my Patreon at patreon.com/radicaldemocracy and throw me a few bucks. Whatever you can afford, it goes a long way and I will greatly appreciate it. It helps the channel to continue to exist and to grow. And I really appreciate the support. Thank you so much. And I hope to see you soon. All right. Peace. All right, that was a good one. That one's it.